shine its light on it. But you know, that's how he's beating Romney. I mean, he's not beating Romney with money. He's not beating Romney.
Okay, we will leave this now. The U.S. House gaveling back in for a series of votes. Live coverage here on C-SPAN.
Resolution 522. Resolution providing for consideration of the bill, H.R. 1173, to repeal the class program.
Referred to the House calendar and ordered printed. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, proceedings will resume on questions previously postponed. Votes will be taken in the following order. The motion to suspend the rules and adopt House Resolution 516 by the ayes and nays. The motion to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 2070 by the ayes and nays. And the motion to instruct on House Resolution 3630 by the ayes and nays. The first electronic vote will be conducted as a 15-minute vote. Remaining electronic votes will be conducted as 5-minute votes. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Ryan, to suspend the rules and agree to H.Res. 516, on which the ayes and nays were ordered. The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Resolution 516. Resolution expressing the sense of the House of Representatives that the passage of a fiscal year 2013 federal budget is of national importance.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and agree to the resolution? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote.
Just 3 votes on the House floor. The first one is 15, and 2 5-minute votes will follow. This is a non-binding measure which stresses the importance of passing annual budget resolutions, in particular the fiscal year 2013 federal budget, which has yet to be submitted by the President. The Republicans today marking, and many of them wearing buttons saying 1,000 days, marking 3 years since April 2009 when the Senate last passed a budget resolution. In fact, the Wall Street Journal this morning reported that the President will release his 2013 budget a week later than expected. It will be released, according to the Wall Street Journal, on February 13th because the administration needs more time to finalize decisions and technical details, according to an administration official. So the first vote here, 15 minutes, 2 5-minute votes will follow. And then later this evening, of course, the House will welcome the Senate in a joint session to hear from the President in the State of the Union address. And this morning on Washington Journal, we previewed the address with Representative Steve Sutherland, Republican of Florida.
Congressman Steve Sutherland, Republican of Florida, just saying before we came back here, all eyes on Florida. Have you endorsed for next Tuesday's primary?
I have not.
Will you?
As of right now, you know, I'm taking all the information that I think all the Florida citizens are taking, and I can't answer that question yet. I know that I won't endorse today. We're watching the developments on the ground. Obviously, we were very attentive to what was going on in South Carolina, knowing that it was moving our way, and like a hurricane, and those of us in Florida are familiar with those. So you know, we're not sure yet if we're going to weigh in.
Are you undecided, or just not sure about whether or not you want to endorse?
No, I mean, as far as an individual, it's funny. Me and my wife and my kids. I have 4 daughters, and 2 of them are of voting age, and we talk about this, and we certainly have. We have several of them that appeal to us personally, and so we, you know, we did absentee. I had to do absentee voting because I'm here in D.C. and will not be in Florida next Tuesday.
So you already voted?
I have voted.
Okay, so you have already made up your mind?
Yes.
Okay.
Personally.
Okay. So you're not going to tell us who that is, though, I assume.
I'm not going to tell you this morning who I voted for. I'm not prepared to do that.
Okay. Disagreement?
I put it in a secrecy envelope that I had to send in, so apparently it's a secret. But I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I was just wondering if there's disagreement in your household, then. Did your daughters vote for somebody else?
Well, I know there's unity where it matters most, and that's with my wife.
Okay.
So I'm my 2 daughters, both in college, have yet to send it in. So I think they're still waffling a little bit.
Larry Sabato has a piece in the papers this morning about whether or not endorsements really count. Do you think they matter?
No, I think they make us feel good. And being a new member of Congress and having never run before, you know, this is all still relatively new to me. And I remember when I was, you know, getting endorsements, it made me feel good. It made me feel that, you know, people were getting behind my efforts. And I think that would be the case with any candidate.
Do you think it gives the perception of inevitability?
Maybe to some people. I know some people would probably respond just the opposite to an endorsement because they don't want to be, you know, bullied into supporting someone. So I think with some people it may have the opposite effect. So I don't think they have as much impact as sometimes people would like to think they do.
18th debate last night in Florida, another one coming up on Thursday. We asked this of our viewers earlier, helping or hurting?
Well, I think it serves a purpose that prepares the eventual nominee to step into the bigger ring that we're going to see, the person that's going to challenge President Obama. I think they serve its purpose. I think it's ugly to watch sometimes, but I think that they are all going to benefit, you know, and make each other stronger and better. I also think that sometimes it hurts the people in that we don't like seeing the fighting and the personal attacks. And I wish that was not part of the political process because I think in the end, you know, I think you see the untruths, you see the things that are said about each other. And I'm of the personal opinion that if you have to lie to get into office, you're probably going to lie to stay there.
Here's the Washington Post this morning with this headline, Dueling Versions of the Un-Obama. They write this, Romney is trying to reach a general election audience, including many people who voted for Obama in 2008 and still like him personally. So he cast the president as an honest mistake, a low performer who simply needs to be replaced. Gingrich, by contrast, is aiming at a Republican primary electorate that never liked Obama much to begin with. So he portrays the president as the representative of a whole poisoned way of thinking, an adversary who needs to be not just defeated, but repudiated. Which camp do you put yourself in?
Probably a little of both. I think some of the policies of the president have been terribly damaging to America. But I will say this, as far as being an underperformer, I would disagree. I think that the president has done exactly what he promised he would do. Now, I disagree with what he wanted to do, but if you are a supporter of Barack Obama and his policies, then you would have to be, I think, extremely pleased that what was pushed through the 111th Congress was perfection if you are a progressive, liberal-minded supporter of the president. So I think that to say that he was an underperformer, as the article alluded to, I think it depends on who you ask. I think many would say, if you were a supporter of the president, you know, that he was an overperformer, and I think that if you believe in his policies.
George Will has this column this morning about the former speaker. He says this, it's a guy we don't trust. He writes, on Sunday morning from coast to coast, Republican candidates for Congress, governorships, and other offices awakened to a sobering thought. They could be running next autumn with Gingrich, whose current approval rating nationally in a January 24th to 14th Fox News and Opinion Dynamics poll was 27% favorable, 56% unfavorable atop the ticket. Are you concerned about that?
Well, I think this. I think any member of Congress, if they are more aligned with another political candidate than they are with the constituents that they represent, they are on thin ice. I think any member of Congress, if they are staying in touch with their constituents, if they're focusing on constituent services, they're seen in the district, and they're fighting for those they represent, I think they're going to be fine. I think that the American people are fair, and they judge an individual based on their individual performance. I think what happens when individuals start to focus on things other than their constituents, they get in trouble. And I have found that just in the 12 months that I've been here, and I certainly don't want to make that mistake.
Before I get to phone calls, what about the focus on debates? Because George Will writes, you know, Republican voters, Gingrich encourages Republican voters to believe he should be nominated because he would do the best in, at most, 3 debates with President Barack Obama. So because Gingrich might sparkle during 4.5 hours of debates, he should be given 4 hours of control of nuclear weapons? 4 years, excuse me?
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously you have to look at you have to have a 50,000-foot view of the whole body of work of an individual. You can't just look at their ability to debate. I don't think that's enough. You have to look at past, and we clearly are seeing in these debates people wanting to focus on past. I think we also need to look on current. What are they doing now? What have they been doing in the most recent past to move our policies and our beliefs forward? And then obviously we really should attune to what is their vision. We've got to have someone who's visionary, who's a uniter, not a divider. And and sometimes in all these debates, it's hard to see that.
We'll get to phone calls here. Wayne's a Democrat in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Go ahead, Wayne.
I would like to know, right, the Republicans, I don't care what President Obama tried to do, they always going against him. Why can't y'all get together and solve this problem that we have? The people are sick and tired of y'all. And that's all I have to say. We are sick and tired of y'all. Goodbye.
Bringing up the approval rate that we saw there, 84% in the last Gallup poll disapproving of Congress.
Right. I have, and I understand Wayne's aggravation. I think that, but let me say this. He made a comment about how the Republicans are not for the president, perhaps, and are always challenging him. And I think that it is the responsibility sometimes for the minority party to challenge the president. They should do so fairly, but I don't recall a whole lot of staunch Democrats that were supporting President Bush. So I think there's give and take on both sides. I think that there's some things that I do think that we have done. Everybody wants to talk about the division. I think there's some things we have done in this Congress that have been very positive. I looked, last year in the State of the Union, the President outlined his desire to repeal the 1099, which we did. Both sides of the aisle agreed with that. The free trade agreements with South Korea and Colombia and Panama, we found common ground there, and we immediately passed those, and they passed both chambers, signed into law. So I think Wayne, there may be some things that he's not looking at, but obviously there on a day-to-day basis there is a vision, two different Americas going forward, but I don't think that it's just the Republicans piling on against President Obama. I think there, if we remember correctly, there was plenty of Democrats piling on President Bush. So I just think that's a natural thing of the president.
Our viewers, if they want, can send you a question via Twitter, twitter.com, C-SPAN WJ. Here's one from C-SPAN Junkie, and he wants to go back to endorsements. Do they have something to do with promises that you receive, of you receiving help later in the campaigns? In other words, these candidates come to you, will you endorse me and I'll help you?
That's a fair question. And C-SPAN Junkie asked a good question. I think I personally have met with several of the candidates. I have, and not one of them have promised me anything. And I will tell you, if anyone promised me anything and they were very forward and just threw that out there, that would be a reason enough for me not to support that candidate. Again, I went from small business last year straight to Congress. I had never served in an elected position before. I run a three-generation business that my grandfather started almost 60 years ago. So I understand when Wayne called earlier, I understand his frustration because I, in many ways, felt the same aggravation as Wayne. So no, none of the members have made, none of the candidates have made any promises to me down the road.
But they were seeking your endorsement?
Absolutely. Sure.
How many phone calls did you get?
I've received probably 3 up to this point, 3, 4. I know some of the ones I received a phone call from have now dropped out of the race.
Okay.
And I've had a few face-to-face meetings, and so, but no, none of them have asked me or promised me anything, nor have I asked them for anything down the road, other than just to do the right thing.
Port St. Joe, Florida. Rod, a Republican. Rod, have you already voted, or do you?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
No, I haven't. I always wait to the day to vote. Hey, Congressman, do you think President Obama violated the Constitution when he appointed Richard Cordray to head the CFPB without the consent of the Senate?
I do think that the president erred greatly when you look at what he did in the recess appointment. Now, let me say this. I don't like recess appointments with anyone in the White House, whether it be Republican or Democrat. I think recess appointments really go against the spirit of proper examination. So whether it's a Democrat or whether it's a Republican, I think recess appointments are bad. But I do think that the Constitution is very clear regarding what recess appointments are allowed and what are not, and so therefore, but when the body is not in recess, you cannot claim a recess appointment. And so I do think that the president erred there, just as I think that we also erred, back earlier in our participation in Libya. I made it very clear that so there's been a couple skirts that I think crossed the line that the president should not have done.
Congressman Steve Sutherland is our guest, talking about Florida and that primary on Tuesday. Monty Laban has this tweet: knowledgeable constituencies ignore endorsements and focus on candidates capable of serving the nation. Seeking endorsements is weakness, according to him. And by the way, 19 of the Republican members of the Florida House delegation, of the 19, 8 have endorsed Romney and 1 has endorsed Gingrich. Congressman today telling us he has not endorsed, doesn't know if he will before Tuesday, but has already voted absentee vote.
I have.
All right.
But I would agree with Monty. I think that I think many times it's much to do about nothing.
William, an independent in Mountain Lakes, New Jersey. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm interested in these tax cuts. The tax cuts in prior years, going back for about 10 or 15 years, 10 years, say we had them. The politicians keep on talking about how the tax cuts help the economy. They're going to produce jobs. For 10 years we had these tax cuts, and they haven't really accomplished anything. I just want to make one other point also. The common people in the United States, although they don't pay a great percentage of the federal income taxes, we pay the taxes to support the states and local governments. We pay for the teachers, the firemen, the police departments, state employees, county employees, city employees. The other thing is, this bundle of taxes they pay is probably more than equal to all the federal income taxes the government collects.
Congressman?
Well, I think William is right. I mean, the greatness of America, both financially and productivity, as far as the productivity of America, is found in the American people. And so I think one of the things that when you talk about taxes, I think the purpose of the taxes obviously are to collect monies to support the Treasury. But I think that a good, stable environment produces productivity. And I think that knowing what your taxes are going to be, knowing what regulatory challenges you're going to have or requirements you're going to have, I think produces more for our Treasury. And so, but I do agree with William. I think that the American people on the local level, they're the ones that are holding up America, and I mean lifting to hold up America and to keep us, on a path that is going to be positive for our children and grandchildren. Those individuals, he talks about the hardworking men and women of this country, obviously may not be paying the most into the Treasury as far as federal income tax, but on a local level, they do. They are paying, they're supporting the tax base in their local communities, their municipalities, and it's those dollars that are providing funds for schools, for paying for their county government, city government, and the sales tax that is enjoyed by every state. So I would agree with William there.
On the Democratic line, Robert in Columbia, South Carolina. Go ahead, Robert.
Good morning, and thanks for C-SPAN. And I'd like to make a couple of points, if you would give me a chance, please. Just let me ask the congressman this. Thank you for being there, sir. You seem very smart, as most politicians do. You seem very intelligent and very well-meaning. What do you think about the Congress doing like former candidate Rick Perry suggested and serve one-half time rather than full-time, blocking and ducking and dodging and running for re-election, number one. Number two, do you not see, comment please on term limits. I suggest nobody should serve more than 6 years, 5 years for working, and 1 year getting familiar with the territory, making acquaintances and forming alliances, partnerships. But 5 years should be enough for anybody, not to go old and gray. I'm a Democrat, but I think people like Jim Clyburn out of South Carolina here, he's the best thing we've seen out of South Carolina in centuries, in decades. But the man is old. You're getting up there, sir. Nothing personal, but I see so many politicians don't know when to go home. They don't.
Okay, got your point, Robert. Two points there, actually.
Sure. I think he was referring to Governor Rick Perry's comments about trying to make Congress a part-time institution. I think one of the things that really produces that comment is that members of Congress seem distant from the people they represent, and when you're distant, you know, I think President Reagan said government governs best when it governs closest to the people. So I would agree with Robert's assessment there. I think that, now do you solve that with term limits? I don't know. I think that as far as term limits are concerned, I think that the bureaucrats here would perhaps love that because they're here. They're permanent fixtures here in Washington, D.C. And so therefore to have members come in and go out, come in and go out, come in and go out, what you've done is you've ceded greater responsibility, greater authority to the full-time bureaucrats. And do we want bureaucrats to run the country and to determine the direction of our country?
Isn't that the case for earmarks?
Well, I think perhaps, yeah.
I mean, you don't want bureaucrats deciding where the money goes.
Yeah.
You represent the constituents.
Well, and I think, and that's a valid, in all fairness, that's a valid argument for earmarks. I think, however, I know that we run our business based on a budget model, and we look at the needs of all of our companies, and then we determine what funds need to go where. So I'm a big proponent of a proper budgeting process. I will say this, Robert.
Are you against earmarks? Just to be clear.
I think it's been very good to not have earmarks this year. I think it's been a shock to the system, and whether that stays in place long term, there's not been a lot of discussion about that. But I think this year it has been very helpful to allow freshmen like me to come in without the diversion of earmarks and say, hey, we got to be fiscally responsible, and we've got to pass or vote down pieces of legislation based on their fiscal merit. I will say to Robert, thank you for his comments about how I look smart and talk smart, but I don't think my children would agree. But it's an illusion, Robert. Not quite as smart as sometimes I think I am, but I appreciate that.
We'll hear from a Republican. Joe in Plymouth, Michigan.
Yes, I'm calling about the Congress passing all these jobs bills, and they're sitting on Senator Reid's desk, and then they get the approval rating of 12. And then Obama goes to bed every night saying that he goes to sleep about the American jobs.
Okay.
And he's turning down the Keystone Pipeline and everything else. Now, what's going on around here?
Well, I think that that's a great point. It's great aggravation. The president wants to talk about a do-nothing Congress. And I want to go back to, I think it was William that Wayne earlier made a comment about bashing the president. I don't think it's bashing, just to point out some things that I disagree with. It's not bashing, it's not personal, but I think it's fair game.
This vote, the yeas are 409, the nays are 1 voting present.
Today.
2/3 being in the 1.
Mr. Brown of Georgia. Mr. Brown of Georgia votes aye.
On this vote, The yeas are 410. The nays are 1 voting present, 2/3 being in the affirmative. The rules are suspended. The resolution is agreed to, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion by the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Johnson, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 2070 as amended, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar number 249, H.R. 2070. A bill to direct the Secretary of the Interior to install in the area of the World War II Memorial in the District of Columbia a suitable plaque or an inscription with the words that President Franklin D. Roosevelt prayed with the nation on June 6, 1944, the morning of D-Day.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
One more 5-minute vote will follow this, and that will be it for votes this afternoon. Shortly thereafter, the House will gavel out so that the chamber can be prepared for tonight's joint session and the State of the Union by President Obama. Speaker Boehner's office released information that the Speaker is hosting local leaders and what they're terming job creators hurt by the President's decision to reject the Keystone XL pipeline extension. Meanwhile, on the Democratic side, Leader Pelosi will have as guest this evening the Governor of Maryland, Martin O'Malley, also Governor Chris Gregoire of Washington State, and Richard Trumka, President of the AFL-CIO. Our coverage this evening, 8 o'clock Eastern, here on C-SPAN. And also keep in mind you can follow online at cspan.org. As a matter of fact, if you have a tablet or a laptop, you can follow tweets and Facebook posts from members of Congress while you watch the speech on C-SPAN. And you can do that by going to cspan.org/screen2 to take a look at that. It's up now. You can see some of the tweets coming in by members and also by reporters who cover Congress. Earlier today in the House, they did approve by voice vote legislation which funds the Federal Aviation Administration through February 17th. It's a short-term funding measure, one more extension before a long-term deal is reached. Again, that passed in the House earlier by voice vote.
The yeas are 386, the nays are 26. Two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion to instruct on H.R. 3630, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Motion to instruct conferees offered by Ms. Capps of California on H.R. 3630.
Question is on the motion. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
And this is the last vote of the day, a 5-minute vote on instructing conferees in the House and Senate conference over the payroll tax cut extension. That conference got underway today. We covered it live on C-SPAN 3, but they have finished for the day. Chad Pergram of Fox tweeted after the hearing, after that conference meeting got done, that the next payroll tax conference committee will meet February 1st. He says the current deal expires on February the 29th. Once the House finishes with this vote, they shortly thereafter will wrap things up, and they will clear the floor to make the House ready for the joint session tonight and the State of the Union. Susan Crabtree in the Washington Times, in previewing the President's speech, said that over the weekend, President Obama previewed a video of the speech online to 10 million supporters. In the video, the President described the address as, quote, a bookend to remarks he made in Kansas last month. That speech involved the policies of Theodore Roosevelt, who served from 1901 to 1909, and is perhaps best known for cracking down on some of the country's biggest business monopolies. That's from the Washington Times. President Obama this evening, the State of the Union address, our coverage here on C-SPAN starting at 8 p.m. Eastern.
The yeas are 397, the nays are 16. The motion is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. House will be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I would like to request that my name be removed as the co-sponsor of H.R. 3261.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that when the House adjourns today, it adjourn to meet at 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Without objection, so ordered. The chair lays before the House an enrolled bill.
H.R. 3237, an act to amend the SOAR Act by clarifying the scope of coverage of the act.
The chair lays before the House the following personal request.
Leave of absence requested by Mr. Brady of Texas for Monday, January 23rd, and for the balance of the week.
Without objection, the request is granted. Will the House be in order? Would members please clear the well? Would members please clear the well? After consultation among the Speaker and the majority and minority leaders, and with their consent, the Chair announces that when the two Houses meet tonight in joint session to hear an address by the President of the United States, only the doors immediately opposite the Speaker and those immediately to his left and right will be open. No one will be allowed on the floor of the House who does not have the privilege of the floor of the House. Due to the large attendance anticipated, the rule regarding the privilege of the floor must be strictly enforced. Children of members will not be permitted on the floor. The cooperation of all members is requested. The practice of purporting to reserve seats prior to the joint session by placement of placards or personal items will not be allowed. Chamber security may remove these items from the seats. Members may reserve their seats only by physical presence following the security sweep of the chamber. Who seeks recognition? Nobody? Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess until approximately 8:35 p.m. this evening for purpose of receiving in joint session the President of the United States.
The House is going to recess now to prepare the chamber for tonight's State of the Union address from President Obama. Members today completed work on 4 measures, including one instructing House